Go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm going to get pretty straight to it. Don't forget, I've got a 22-0 challenge going on right now. Any merchandise or coffee that I sell between now and the end of April, portion of that proceeds is going to go to 22-0 to help combat veteran suicides here in the United States. Because, quite frankly, the VA and the military aren't doing enough for the people who have laid down their lives for so much. So, hey, you have to show that when I bring you on, Jake. So, I'm really excited to have this candidate for Hennepin County Sheriff come on. We met last summer, and we have played phone tag and dodge him a little bit throughout the time because I don't know, he happens to live in a metro area, and people like that don't have time for a small town folk. We're rocks and cows. No, I'm kidding. Great, and I'm going to say his name wrong 1,000 times because I live in Southeast Minnesota and I'm no good with names. So unless it's Bob, Sue, or Bill, we're good with that. So, and then we can pick on people like, anyway, Jay, I'm bringing you in. And I know as soon as you come on, just make sure I'm saying your name right.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Is it Jai or Jay?
How are you? Hey, thank you for having me on. I apologize. I'm in my car in between some events, but I wanted to make time for you people out in the country there. And so my name is
we can't vote for him, people, as much as we might want to at the end.
Yeah, my name is Jai. So
Jai, there we go.
But I do answer to Jay, and I've been called worse things. So no worries if you slip up and call me Jay.
Oh, that's it's just me. I pick on my co-host on Veteran Nation for trying to read names because he'll be reading names. He's out in California and clearly Hispanic names and whatnot. And I'm like, you're butchering it. You're such a white guy, Mike.
Well, I did want to say I appreciated what you said because I do wear this every single day. 22 a day. I got that from a veteran that was near and dear to his heart, and he took it off his wrist and gave it to me and asked me if I would wear it. And I'm very proud to wear that.
Well, I appreciate you showing that. So as a vet, it's near and dear to me as well. I joined during the first Gulf War thinking I was going to go and save the world in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I was halfway through basic training and they go, well, we got good news and bad news. And I'm like, well, to the whole platoon, well, what's the good news? The war's over. What's the bad news? The war's over and you're still in the Army. So that different time of my life. But hey, this isn't about me, Jai. This is about you. You made a decision to run for sheriff in Hennepin County, and that decision was made well before events of December with the current sitting sheriff and those ancillary, and I won't say ancillary or tertiary in the sense that they don't matter, but he's already made the decision that he's not going to run again. Very magnanimous of him. But you had made some observations leading up to your decision to campaign for sheriff in Hennepin County that were based on your experience in law enforcement, because you've been at this for a little while.
Yeah, I have 17 years in law enforcement, 15 sworn. I started my career in Lakeville, which is South Metro, and then came up to the city of Bloomington. I've been there for about a little over 8 years now. But I grew up in Minneapolis, and I take that experience equally as important as my law enforcement experience, and seeing what Minneapolis has turned into. It is very disheartening And you put all that together from a law enforcement perspective, and then seeing what's going on in our metro area. And, even though you guys aren't in the metro area, the fact of the matter is we need our Twin Cities to succeed if we are going to have a state that succeeds. And it will only continue to go out other places. And don't fool yourself. I mean, it will hit other counties like it has been doing, but it will do it at a greater rate if we don't get this under control.
Right. Agree 100%. I had Stephen Lowell on last week, and he was the only person to step up and run for the Republican nomination for senator in his district. And he and his wife were on, and they were talking about even where they are on the cusp of the cities, in the the more elite, not them personally, but just kind of seen as that untouched Egan and places like that, where everybody thinks of the things like the George Floyd riots, and they think, oh well, that was Minneapolis and some in St. Paul and whatnot, but the lack of law enforcement leadership in not dogging anybody that you might know on a personal level, but the lack of leadership ultimately bled into these other places.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is we can't continuously do what we have been doing and expect different results.
Well, that's the very definition of insanity.
Exactly, and that's what we kind of have grown accustomed to in law enforcement. So, who are these so-called law enforcement leaders, and why can't we fix this, and why can't we figure this out? As I'm on the campaign trail and as I'm talking to many people, I don't think that gap is as big as the narrative that the media wants to portray. I think the majority of people do want public safety. I think we can agree on that. Like, let's just stop right there. Like, we need public safety, and if you can agree on that, well then great, that's our groundwork and we can build from that. Now we can debate reform, we can debate policies. I'm all for that, but I can't sit at a table with somebody who says we don't need public safety. I mean, that needs to be a basic fundamental groundwork for us to get this figured out.
You said something when I heard you speak, and it was brief that day, and it was kind of a hot, noisy day. If you remember, we met at that meet and greet up. I think was it in Mound? It was Mound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't even think I had announced yet.
Well, there was rumor you were going to announce, but you had said some things that piqued my interest, which made me want to. Yeah, that's right. You were getting ready to announce,
right?
But so you were hinting at getting ready to maybe think about announcing.
Yeah.
But you said some things that piqued my interest, and then on your website, your campaign website, you are very pointed in saying that one of the failings, maybe of the current sheriff, is his political allegiances.
Mm-hmm.
That to some degree, outside of some of maybe the more moral or ethical failings under the certain circumstances, there is a strong political allegiance that he feels he apparently owes this allegiance, these people that he's allied to, fealty, where he's going to toe a line, so to speak. And you're very clear that you have values and you have core convictions and ethics, but you're not running as a Republican. You're not running as a Democrat. You're not running.
TC, I think I lost you there.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
I got you. Can anybody else hear? Let's see this. Let me check audio.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I lost audio on you.
You lost audio. Let me check mine. Test 1 2. There we go. Can you hear me now? Can anybody in the audience hear?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Let me try something here. Can you hear anything? Well, it's showing that I have audio. Maybe he's going to come back out and we can start in again here. Oh, the wonders of technology. Let me see. Oh. Are we getting any sound at all? Yeah, we got sound. There we go. Let's try it again. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Things happen. All right. So anyway, hey, when you do a live show and you're working with a guy who's campaigning from his car, you gotta put up with these things. I appreciate you doing that. So you aren't running as a Republican. You're not running as a Democrat. You're not running as a libertarian. You're not running as a socialist or anything like that. You're running as a sheriff to be the sheriff. And you certainly bring some ethics and some morality and some views to the table, but you don't want to be beholden to a particular party. You don't want to reject a Democrat vote. You don't want to reject a Republican vote, but you don't want to owe a party something on this.
Yeah, and that's what you were talking about with the current sheriff, that he owed the DFL. He was DFL endorsed, so he was lockstep with them. And when you have a governor that's DFL, when you have a mayor, a city council, a county board that's all DFL, regardless of party, I mean, there's no checks and balances there. And when it comes to public safety, I disagree with that. I think you should be nonpartisan. And if you're going to say you're nonpartisan, truly believe that and be that. And for me, we don't ask you if you are a Democrat or a Republican when you call 911. And for that very same reason, we need to make sure we are there for everyone, regardless of political affiliation. And when I get elected, I'm not going to owe favors to any side, and that's how we're going to clean this up.
So I'll ask this: are you being invited to events like conventions and county caucuses and whatnot on either side? Are the Republicans reaching out? Are the Democrats reaching out? Does anyone want to hear from you?
Yeah, well, yeah,
and I don't mean that to be a smart aleck. I mean, let's be honest. There's two sides of a coin here, and as independent as you are, there are some people that if they want to talk to you, they want to hear what you're going to do to support defunding law enforcement, and another side wants to hear what you're going to do to make sure you really ramp up law enforcement. Like we're gonna.
Yeah, and I have been invited by both sides, and I do talk to both sides. And my goal is I want to get those people that are close to the middle left or middle right. Right. I'm not going to get the fringe people on either side, but one thing with me, it doesn't matter what room I'm in, I will say the same thing. And if they don't like it, then so be it. But what I'm realizing is people understand we need public safety. There's no part of me that wants anything to do with defunding the police. We are in a crisis right now where we're losing people at record numbers. We're losing law enforcement officers that don't even have other jobs lined up, but they just know whatever they do, it's going to be better than being a cop. And that's concerning.
And they're oftentimes willing to take a massive pay cut.
Taking massive pay cuts, but these are family decisions of officers that have 5 years on, 6 years on, when you should be in the prime of your career and excited about your career. They're making family decisions that, look, we don't know what we're going to do, but for my family's sake, whatever I decide, it's going to be better than law enforcement, because I could mess up. I could be going to jail. I could be civilly sued, things of that nature, that we need to start championing for our police again, and having leadership that not only does it around election time, but does it all the time. And that's the kind of leader that I would be.
I like one of the things that you say on your campaign site, where like the sheriff is an independent, should be neutral, shouldn't be beholden to a political party. But and for lack of better terminology, constitutionally in the county, the sheriff is the highest ranking law enforcement officer. That means there's going to be times the sheriff's going to have to make some unpopular decisions.
Correct.
And so I promised people I was going to just be a really radical. So here I'm going to just be totally radical now. You're glad you're sitting down. How important to you as sheriff will your oath of office be to protect and defend the Constitution of Minnesota and the United States Republic?
Oh man, that's the number one. I think it's the same as judges, and we have judges that want to legislate from the bench, and it's an issue. And it's very clear what the oath of the office is, and that's to uphold the Constitution. And I wouldn't be any different. You're not going to get any legislation out of me. It's going to be how is our administration going to honor the Constitution? I do see my role as a sheriff being an advocate for the office and for public safety and for our state as a whole when it comes to crime. So I will advocate. But as far as the Constitution goes, it's pretty clear cut on how we handle that.
I got you're the center point right now. People get tired of seeing me. They see me all week long. We have an example here in the state of Minnesota of over the last couple of years, and this isn't a got you. I'm just relaying stories that have been told to me of several sheriffs, especially in Rocks and Cows area, who received phone calls and said, "Look, we need you to play ball with us over some of this stuff." And a couple of those sheriffs said, "You're asking me to do something that I don't think I can do." And they took some heat for saying, "No, we're not going to go out and enforce these things for you with local businesses." And I'm a law enforcement officer. That's what I am. I'm a law enforcement officer. I'm a public servant. I've taken an oath to defend the Constitution, and I expect my men and women to do the same thing. Is that the kind of hard conversation you're going to be willing to have in Hennepin County? Because you're in the heart of it up there. I mean,
we're not going to be the arm of the Attorney General's office, let's say, and say we're going to shut down businesses or things like that. Quite frankly, we don't have the resources to do that. We don't have the metro-wide, law enforcement agencies. We don't have the resources to get into all of that. We need to stop the crime.
Can't even stop crime up there right now. And real crime.
And that is, I think that's a little different for up here than it would be in other areas of the state, where, all hands on deck right now is with this crime. And
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just think it's
one thing about me is I'm happy to answer any questions. You might not like the answer, but at least I will answer them.
Well, I appreciate you being willing to sit down and do this, because you had no idea what you were walking into.
No, hey, this is why this is why I'm running, though. I think we need to have these conversations, and there needs to be transparency in things. And I don't get upset about that. I get upset when I saw candidates that don't answer questions.
Oh,
and I vowed that that's not the kind of campaign we would run. But again, I don't change my answers, depending on what room I am in. So, some people don't like it, But it's one of those things, DC. It's where we have to get this crime under control.
What do you
So
think is a bigger pandemic right now? And I use that term somewhat cheekily. Lack of accountability in especially the metro areas, and I'm gonna lump Rochester into that now too, being the third largest city in the state. It's seeing the same problem. Maybe not to the scale that Minneapolis is or St. Paul, but Rochester is seeing a massive increase in crime. And so, do you the bigger pandemic in your eyes would be, and I there again I use it in a calculated way, lack of respect for law enforcement and law, or a lack of support for law enforcement from the general public? And if it is a lack of support for law enforcement from the general public, what do you think has brought that about? Because I think, well, go ahead. I'll let you answer that.
that's a great question. um, Boy,
I know I'm great at putting people on a weird spot. So
no, they're equally as important, and I think they equally have played a role in this. I will say the people that are supportive of law enforcement, um, they have done a good job of being more vocal as of late, and that is very appreciated. We appreciate that, and it's needed. But also this culture of just being resistant to any law enforcement. I mean, we're getting into way more fights than we ever have, and that comes down to just a culture of people uh, feeling empowered and emboldened to be able to do that because they know they're not going to be charged with it. I mean, we have county attorneys that if you spit on an officer, the only way they're going to charge that is if we take a photo of the spit on us. And then even at that point, it's probably going to be hard for them to charge it. But you tell me, if somebody spits in your face, you want to leave that spit on your face for somebody else to take a photo of it for charging purposes?
your initial reaction is going to be to wipe it off without even thinking. It's
Right.
just instinctual.
Exactly. So
I'll relate a story to you. This happened several years ago while I was, and my story about my involvement in the law enforcement world is, and my reason for leaving are a lot different. And I've hinted at that a little bit with you and when we first met, but some of it's been my outspokenness about some of these issues. But I was assaulted rather severely in the line of duty a little over 4 years ago. And I didn't even know that they ended up, I know that charges were forwarded to the county attorney's office, but I was never told what they were going to charge the person with. I was never told when they were going to charge them. And as you know, the Victims' Bill of Rights states that before a plea deal can even be offered to or agreed upon with the defendant, that plea agreement has to be presented to the victim. The victim doesn't get to say yes or no, but they can offer their opinion on it. None of that stuff was done with me, ever. And I wasn't even told that he was going to be released on bond until the day he went to court to be released on bond. And my sergeant had to come tell me, by the way, so-and-so is going to get released. Talk about a failure in the system. So, and it's what you're saying. It's there's no repercussions. And so when you say you're getting into fights more, you're not talking about the guy who's walking down the street and somebody walks up to him and goes, "Hey, we got reports that you're suspicious." And they said, "Well, is this a stop in an ID state?" That's not what you're talking. You're not talking about an argument or a disagreement. You mean fights. Yeah, actual fights.
I mean fights, and they're fights for very minimal reasons.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody steals something from the gas station, and we have an obligation to stop them and talk to them. And 9 times out of 10, if it's a stop that goes okay, that person might not even be charged with anything, right? But it's one of those things where we need to still talk to you, and that alone escalates it to, you're fighting on the side of the road, like physically fighting
over what could possibly be, if at worst, a petty misdemeanor.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where people just know that there's no consequences anymore.
And that's why I told my story, is like, this the wrist.
Well, along with your story, that's why cops are leaving.
Yeah. Oh, I talk to them all the time. I'm done. Guys are like, I'm going to do an entire career. They're like, no, I'm done. Yeah. The law enforcement's bleeding out.
That is going to be our biggest challenge in law enforcement, is going to be keeping people in this profession, keeping good people in this profession.
That's huge, because I say this as a critique all the time, that the ones that you want are the ones who are getting abused.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there really doing their job. I tell people all the time, my brother's been in law enforcement for over 20 years now. If you're having a bad day and it's a domestic at your house, even if you're the suspect, you want my brother to show up at your door. And I got a friend in the Rochester area, same thing. If you're having a bad day, you want him to show up at your door.
Yeah.
But there are people that are getting hired now, and I know you've seen this over the years, that it doesn't register with them that they're not there just to arrest. They're there to de-escalate, to get to the bottom of something, and in as much as they can, for the good of the community. And what's happening is these people who, like you, who have been at it for a while, genuinely care about the community, aren't in it just for the position of power that might be there, are leaving, and that influence is being lost in the younger generation of people coming up. And they don't have that guiding example of that crotchety old veteran who maybe nobody really likes because he kind of barks at all the new people.
Yeah.
But when you watch him out on the street, or you watch him interacting with somebody, and you're like, wow, this guy's got respect.
Yes.
And I get emotional because I think about it. I've seen it. And this is why cops are getting hurt. Because the calming influence of the person who gives a damn, who didn't need to go to CIT, by the way, is really good at it naturally, is gone. It's gone. Mm-hmm. Or you get certain ones who do fly under the radar for some reason, and maybe they've never been a real problem, but they've always had that calming influence around them, and now that calming influence is gone, and now they're making bad decisions because that's who they are.
Yeah, what really hurts me is I've worked with some really great officers throughout my career, and the majority of officers that I have worked with are white officers. And
and you said they were good? That can't be.
Well, we go to like a domestic, and the parents are fighting, and the baby has no diapers, and I see one of my partners say, what size diapers does the kid wear, and leaves and comes back 15 minutes later and buys a whole pack of diapers for the kid. Mm-hmm. And then the next call
ain't coming out of the county.
He's called a racist over and over and over again. And I see this often, but I asked a couple of my partners once, I said, how often do you think, like legitimately, how often do you think you get called a racist during a shift? And they said, thinking about it, probably 8 to 10 times a shift. And that makes me sad that's the first go-to for a lot of people. And these people are busting their butts to make sure the community is safe. And that's tough for me.
But what about you? I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, everybody knows who Brandon Tatum is, and he tells his stories about what he went through as a black cop, and he's big platform now and everything. But like, outside of running for sheriff, you're just the average run-of-the-mill cop in Minneapolis, correct?
Yeah. Well, I'm in Bloomington.
Or in Bloomington, excuse me. But you're the average run-of-the-mill cop. I can't imagine that you get a real warm reception sometimes from the same people who are attacking your white brothers.
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. There's people that are instantly disgusted with me for wearing the uniform. Um, but it's one of those things that you got to remember what the goal here is and what we're fighting for. And what we are fighting for is um, we want a system that's fair for everyone, right? And we can acknowledge a history of it being unfair for certain groups, but it doesn't mean we don't hold people accountable moving forward.
Correct.
And we need that common sense approach that, yeah, we can acknowledge it, but it doesn't mean we're going to go extremely the opposite way and not charge anybody with anything.
Yeah, you're not going to fix all of the problems that we had in the past by now all of a sudden not charging people, as if somehow that's going to make all of the bad, sometimes fundamentally evil decisions that were made.
Yeah, I
You
think
can't
about
make
the
that go
victims.
away.
Think about all the victims that we're having in our state right now, and it's not just the metro area; it's
Right.
statewide.
Oh yeah.
Carjackings, violent crimes. It's through the roof, and it doesn't matter what race you are. It affects everyone.
You brought up carjackings, and so I know you probably have to get going pretty soon, so I won't push it for too long. But
No, I enjoy this conversation. Let's get into it.
um, recently, a group of law enforcement leaders in the state of Minnesota approached the Minnesota House and said, "Look, we really need you guys to pass a law that allows us, without a warrant, to put air tags on stolen vehicles, whether they be carjacked or just stolen, because ultimately it's going to be safer for everyone if we can do that without a warrant. Because right now, when a vehicle's stolen, the only way we can tag it is, and for those who don't know, air tag is kind of a generic name to use for a GPS tracking device that allows law enforcement to hunt down a car when it's been stolen. And current law says that the only way you can do that in the state of Minnesota is to do it with permission of the vehicle owner. If they don't give permission, then you have to get a warrant. And the argument is being made, and I can understand it to some degree, that for safety's sake, we can't wait for a warrant. We need to be able to do this so that we can track the vehicle, and then when it's finally stopped and then at some place, we can swoop in then without having these high-speed chases. While I understand the need for safety, do you think that could open up a whole can of worms when it comes to warrants and tracking and whatnot? Or because let's be honest, anything can be abused. Like,
Right.
do you think it's a good idea? Do you think there's a way that can be written, if they do approve it, to be written to guarantee it's not abused? Or do you think we just go with the way it is right now?
Well, here was my question when that was brought up, and it's still my question, and nobody will answer it. And
Color me shocked.
is it going to result in a charge? Or is it going to result in a conviction? Because if it's just finding these guys, finding the cars, finding these guys, arresting them, and then they're put out on bail, and then there's no charges, then what's the point?
Right.
If it's gonna result in a conviction, then yeah, let's look at it. To your point, it doesn't open up a door of infringing on privacy. That's something that we would need checks and balances for, and that's something that we would all, not just in law enforcement, but on the judicial side and the legislators, we need to come up with checks and balances to make sure that doesn't happen. That is a concern that I know people have, but ultimately for me is, are we charging people?
Right.
Are we going to charge them? Because it doesn't do us any good to put these on the vehicles if the people are out within 48 hours.
Well, it's just like the proposed law that was going to strengthen the teeth on a law. what? so,
Yeah.
so we need to write another law to require that the other law is being enforced to the fullest capacity. Well, then why not just enforce the law to its fullest capacity? That just makes no sense. That we just keep piling laws, and pretty soon the cops are gonna have to walk around with law degrees.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then make sure the cops are paid for that.
They should be paid better than most attorneys anyway. So,
Yeah.
nah,
Well,
I say that somewhat cheekily.
well, you know this. I mean, a lot of cops are. It's one profession that we have to wear 10 different hats during any given shift.
Sometimes during 10 different hats during one encounter.
Right, exactly. I mean, are we a social worker? Are we clergy? Are we a teacher? Are we an enforcer?
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And the answer is that's pretty soon you're just going to have to take a van to every stop for all the guys you're going to have there to cover all the bases.
Right. And that's one thing, I want people to understand, like, this is why we need educated law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's one for you. Civil asset forfeiture. Does it need reforming?
Well, I think, I mean, I would say, there's reform needed for everything, but reform is always continuous anyways, right? Like, I think we need to look at it. If there's something specific that you're asking about with the civil forfeiture,
I don't think we see it happen as much in Minnesota, but we see civil asset forfeiture happening in places across the country where, sometimes, you had $5,000 in cash on you and we can't necessarily trace it to anything illegal, but we suspect it's illegal. So we're going to seize this. Now you have to go to court and fight for that. And so sometimes they just give up because the fight to get your $5,000 back costs more than the $5,000 is worth. So
it's a case by case, scenario where it's sometimes that is rightfully needed and warranted, right? Illegally warranted to do that. But if
when
you're
you
just
bust the
doing
guy
it
with a
for,
fleet of cars and he's hauling methamphetamine across your state,
Yeah.
you might want to steal his excuse me, I didn't mean steal. You might want to seize his Corvette if he's got meth in it. I get that.
Yeah, but if we're talking about, a means of, retaliation, so to speak, on
Which we've
someone,
seen, of course.
yeah, that I would hope that we can get that figured out.
No, I appreciate that. I think it's a difficult question for a lot of people because a lot of times they, sorry, a message from a family member. I'm like, there are people who claim it's never a good thing, and they're normally the ones that are hiding something. And then there are people who are going, wait a minute, I do have some questions about how we do this.
Mhm.
It's the same thing with no-knock warrants.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Well, that should scare you if we're thinking on the same wavelength already. No, can I understand the reason for no-knock warrants to a degree? Sure. But what we've been seeing now over the last couple of years is that there have been some places where there's apparently not even any thought put into some of them. And we've had some very tragic situations arise because of that. And boy, if you're going to execute one of those, boy, you had better make sure you got all your T's crosses and your T's crossed and your I's dotted real well.
Well, that's another thing that goes to who are our police supervisors and our police leaders, and why does Minneapolis use it for X amount of cases and St. Paul doesn't use them, or other outstate counties rarely use them, but they're needed in Minneapolis, or, and I keep on saying Minneapolis because if you look back at some of the ones that they have used the no-knock warrants on, it kind of leaves you scratching your head as to why they did that. But we need no-knock warrants. I would say this is one of those issues that I don't think we're far off on. I think the majority of law enforcement and the public realize we need to limit no knock warrants, and we're good with that for everybody's sake. I don't want to have an officer get hurt, executing a no knock warrant when we did not need one. But at the same time, we need to leave that door open to allow us the ability to use a no knock warrant when it is necessary.
So what I'm hearing you say is rare.
Rare, very rare.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's been the
comfortable with
opposite.
that word.
And that's been the opposite of what we've been seeing in their use across the country over the last few years. It's not been as rare as it once was, and it's frequent enough now where people are starting to ask more questions. And
yeah, I'm comfortable with using the word rare. And I have spoken with other people in leadership positions in unions and said, how far are we off on this? And, there's some, we have to work out some issues, but we're not that far off.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've asked that question to other people just in general conversation, and they're like, I think we don't really want to close the door on it. I think we don't want to define it as rare, because then people ask what rare is, and I'm like, well, you're really not answering the question. So,
I'm comfortable saying rare, and at the same time, it is not close. We're not closing the door on it, right?
Right.
But it shouldn't be one of those we're going to jump right to it. I mean, we really should limit them, aggressively limit them.
Ooh, I like that. Aggressively limit them. I like that better than rare. That's even just growl. So Minnesota is, I know this seems, I'm trying to hit all the hot button issues. And the reason I'm asking some of these hot button questions is, even though I'm way down here in the southeast corner of Minnesota, a decent percentage of my viewer base is actually would be in your jurisdiction. People in your area, and people who are very excited that somebody decent is challenging for sheriff in Hennepin County right now. And I know there's what are there, 48 of you at this time that are running for sheriff?
Yeah, it seems like that. I think there's probably 4 total, I believe.
Is it? Because every time I refresh my news feed, it's like, oh, hey, and Bill, who retired from law enforcement 25 years ago, is now running for sheriff in Hennepin County. I'm like, I don't even know who Bill is.
Well, it's one of those things. It's an open seat, and I have been in this before what happened in December, like you stated. I have a vision and a philosophy, and we are trending the wrong way, and that's why that's why I'm running. I'm not in this because I see an opportunity for a job, So, I think some of the other ones have.
Somebody in the chat said in Pittsburgh, protesters get right hook. I'm imagining that means something other than ID. Thanks for stopping in. He's a new fan, if you will, from another feed, another stream. Person that I hosted here a couple of weeks ago, and he watches once in a while. So thanks for chiming in, ID. Where I was going with that is, even in Hennepin County, there are people who have strong concerns about the direction of gun control. And currently in the state of Minnesota, we have a very erudite man who wants to require licensing for you to even own a gun, not carry, not a permit to carry concealed or open. He just wants everybody to have a license and be approved to buy a gun. So there are some questions, because once somebody feels bold enough to start putting that kind of legislation out there, they're just going to keep throwing things until they start to gain traction. We've seen this over and over and over again with all sorts of legislation. And currently, the state of Minnesota a few years ago went from being a may issue state, or a shall issue state, went from may issue to shall or must issue. In other words, unless the sheriff has a very compelling criminal or psychological reason to believe a person is dangerous when it comes to carrying a firearm in the open or concealed, they don't have tenable ground to refuse to allow that. Now, we can have a debate about constitutional carry and on and on and on, but as sheriff, will you continue to advocate for that same kind of language, that it shall be it shall be or must issue? And how will you address any assaults on that, as far as changing it or restricting it even more?
So I am a champion for the Second Amendment. I am a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. And here is why I have that stance. And that goes to right now in Minneapolis. If you call the police for a priority one call, like an assault or, something even worse, your response time, you're looking at a 16 to a 21-minute response time.
Say that again.
A 16 to a 21-minute response time for help.
Yeah, you can bleed out in a lot less time than that.
Because of that reasoning, I am absolutely for legal gun ownership. Legal gun ownership. I think people get that confused, right? There's ways of getting illegal guns off the street, but I am for legal gun ownership, and I don't want to hinder that process, and I don't want to put more roadblocks in between somebody legally doing that. We need people to be able to protect themselves, because right now your government has failed you when you're waiting 16 to 21 minutes.
Yeah. You can get a pizza faster than that.
Yeah. I mean, does that make sense to you?
Not that anybody wants to deliver pizza in Minneapolis right now either.
Right. Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh. Pizza's important, but yeah. No, you answered it, and I think you answered it in a way that, because what you said was there's a way to get illegal weapons off the street, and people do have to understand. I don't care how constitutional you are. A person who's committing a crime with a gun has an illegal weapon at that point. I don't care if it's a BB gun or a fully automatic Gatling gun. At that point, when they're committing the crime, it's illegal.
Right.
And when you purchase a weapon, even if you go to a gun store and you purchase a weapon with the intent of committing a crime, that's not going to prevent the crime. The crime is your intent. I have to say that carefully for my nuanced people. Just because you have something doesn't mean you have intent. But when you buy something with the intent of committing a crime, that's a problem. And I understand the fear on the part of some people when they start to hear the language of legal weapons and whatnot. It does cause them to kind of quiver a little bit, and I can understand why. But people have to understand that within law enforcement, there is a massive question about, is this constitutional? Is this not constitutional? What's the person with the weapon doing? We see that constantly in places like Illinois that have, like, it's especially Chicago. There's no such thing as a legal gun practically in that city. Yet look at the violent crime committed with guns in that town. And in Minneapolis, sadly, the Twin Cities area is trending that direction right now. You couldn't pass any more gun laws that are going to stop that. How important will it be for you? Because I know the law enforcement reality for Hennepin County is as big. Well, it encompasses, do you know roughly how many square miles that is?
Hennepin County?
Yeah.
I believe it's like 612
square.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is big, but it's predominantly urban. There's very little anything.
I mean, it's 45 cities and 1.3 million people. It's a big area.
You don't have a lot of guys driving around in rural Hennepin County. There's not. You do provide, obviously, some law enforcement services as part of that, but a lot of what Hennepin County will be doing and continues to do and has been doing is detention, court security, and, as your website says, law enforcement and patrol of places like the Air Force Base and whatnot. But you also make a statement that when local municipal law enforcement leadership and mayors and city councils aren't stepping up and taking care of law enforcement the way it should be done. It's the duty of the sheriff at that time to step in and protect the people. Is that, I mean, that's a big, bold statement, brother. I mean,
Yeah, well, that goes with
that's
the territory of being the chief law enforcement officer of the county, right? It
because
falls.
that's going to step on some toes.
Well, I think there's a way of doing it where, I don't mean to be a bully by doing it, but I also, I think I would hope there would be cities that would understand we need to get this under control, and we can have some disagreement there on how to do it, but at the end of the day, we will get it done. And if you look, there are 7 metro city mayors that are asking for a metro wide response to crime. Well, to me, that's the sheriff's office. That's something the sheriff's office can facilitate on a county wide level. And we need to get back to doing those kind of plans and including everyone in them.
No, I appreciate hearing you say that because, I'm not suspecting that you're going to run around stepping on people's toes on purpose, but people get real touchy when you start to talk about things like, well, if they're not going to do their job, somebody's got to step in and do it. And one of the big talking points today in the law enforcement world and with social justice, no matter which direction, I don't, whether it's critical theory, whatever label you put on it, is the need for law enforcement to recognize and utilize a capacity of empathy for mental health situations, whether that be, drug-induced psychosis, genuine like organic neurological mental health issues, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and on and on and on. And having taken critical incident training to be on the critical incident team for what I did in my career, how important will it be for you to ensure that your staff are getting that kind of training and getting the continuing ed on that stuff? Because it's a problem, and we've seen a massive increase in mental health crises over the last 2 years, and I think some of it's just manufactured by the way we've been living. But how important will that be for you in Hennepin County?
Oh, that's huge. Not only with the citizens we serve, but with the agency as a whole. We need to start taking better care of internally the health of our people in law enforcement, and as far as the people that we serve, that's going to be something that will be changing on a regular routine basis to make sure we fit the needs of people. And that's also including in the professionals from those fields, right? Like for me, I have somebody that I talk regularly with that was a CEO of a chemical dependency recovery place, and another person that was a CEO of a huge health service within Minnesota here system. And we talk at length about some programs that we can implement right away to help that. I mean, Hennepin County has a budget of $2.4 billion with a B. And with that, you have county health, you have county social services. These are programs that we need to make readily available to people. And that's something that I see the sheriff's office can assist with, is by pushing out these initiatives and by helping these people and making sure they understand there are resources out there that they could benefit from.
One of the big things about critical incident team and the training that goes with it is it has awakened in a lot of officers the ability to see in officers or deputies in themselves or in a coworker, a team member when they're having a problem. But don't try and use IPC skills on somebody you work with. That never ends well. They see through that BS right away. Don't IPC me. And I think people, I don't like, we talk an awful lot, there are kind of a couple of schools out there. ID Crisis has told me with War Stories official podcast, former police, first responder, military talk about the job. Maybe good exposure for both of you. I don't know if being exposed is ever good for me. Oh, that's maybe not what he means. But we hear both sides. Oh, law enforcement's not that dangerous. Why are they always worried about their safety? If you're afraid to do your job, then you probably should get a different job. And there's that side that talks about cops aren't in nearly as much danger as they think they are. And then there's the other side, which has some validity too, which is I literally don't know at any given moment on a traffic stop or, even a call for a well-being check. I don't know if the person's going to have a gun and whether that's my last stop of my career, whether I'm killed or, injured so catastrophically that I can never return to work. And we talk an awful lot about the danger from outsiders in the law enforcement career field. But what we don't talk about is kind of the same thing with PTSD. And this is what my Canadian friend to the north here, he's our annoying little brother to the north, Canada. Kent says PTSD support for cops and military is such an important issue. And that's 100% true, especially in the law enforcement world. Sometimes the danger is internal. Cops internalize things because you don't go home and you don't tell your family about the suicide attempt. You don't, that you were intervened in. You don't go home and tell your family about the dead kids in a car accident, or in this case now, getting shot in a random shooting in an urban area. You don't go home and talk about it. And you really don't want to talk about it with your coworkers because they saw it too and they don't want to talk about it. So they internalize a lot of this stuff and they don't take care of themselves the way they should. And the biggest threat oftentimes is suicide. Cops probably more than any other career that a lot of people could think of, cops end up killing themselves more than people imagine. Sometimes they do it through alcohol. Sometimes they literally just go out and do it. But there is a reality to the suicidal tendency in people when they've been exposed to the worst segments of society over and over and over again. And that's the thing that's been on my mind a lot for these guys and gals up in the Twin Cities area, out there trying to do a job and literally every day seeing the worst that humanity has to offer, and then trying to make a difference, and then turn around and seeing these people kicked back out on the street.
Yeah, I mean we have to
that builds up
on it. That's something that would be a priority for me, and that's why I said we're talking about not only the citizens of Hennepin County but for the staff, and making sure those resources are there for them and readily available.
Yeah. So one thing that makes you the best candidate for sheriff in Hennepin County, and you can't say you're stunning good looks. That's what's the one thing that overall that's going to make you the best candidate?
Well, I think it's not just one thing. I think there's a number of reasons why I would be the right choice. There are other people in this race that I think are qualified to do so, but you just have a very distinct difference, right? You have other candidates that are saying that they're independent, but they're secretly Democrat or going for the DFL endorsement or things like that kind of nature. But the reason why I think I am a good candidate is because, number one, my experience not only as a law enforcement officer and how I have prepared myself to do that, being on the street level and having those 3 a.m. domestics and how we handle them. I have the most patrol experience out of any of the candidates here. I'm not a desk jockey. I'm somebody that's out there and trying to get things changed. Secondly, I've never envisioned myself running for office. The reason why I'm doing this is because we need to step up and get things done. I'm not a career politician, nor would I continue to try to be a career politician after this. Thirdly, it's one of those things where we have to look at leadership. I think some of the people in this race, they look at their leadership as by their rank, and I strongly believe leadership is by choice. And for them, uh, being supervisors of different um, different units or agencies that have truly failed us, and I don't think that's good leadership. So we can't just, again, keep on doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We need somebody with fresh eyes that can come in there and understand what it's like to go and handle that 3 a.m. domestic or the crisis that somebody's going through, and also having the experience and the education of being able to put it all together from an administrative level. Having a master's degree in public safety administration, being able to be a quick learner. I got my 4-year degree in 3 years. I got my law enforcement certificate in 8 months. So it's one of those things that you need to be able to encompass all of those things. And then also, I don't know what I don't know, right? So I have the knowledge to count on people that do have that experience, and I will lean on them, and I will have them in my administration, and we'll be able to get some change done.
You're going to pick the best person for the job, not the person that voted for you.
Correct.
Well, there goes your career.
Well, you know what?
You got to surround yourself with sycophants. Don't you know that? That's the only way you stay in power.
At the end of the day, I'm going to win or lose. We're going to have a campaign that I'm proud of, and we need to look in the mirror and be proud of that. So, I tell it like it is, and we will have the right people in the position, even if those people are people that went against me at some point.
Well, and that's the big thing, and I think it's a fair critique a lot of times in law enforcement. There is a little bit of the good old boys club, although a good old boys club can now encompass, it just sounds weird to say the good old girls. But that kind of that there is some of that good old boys club where, oh, hey, we've been friends for a long time. We've come up through the ranks, and yeah, maybe you're a good deputy or a good officer, but we've gotten along and you've gotten my back. So I'm going to give you a shot at this. And fortunately, there's a lot of places now where that has been eliminated from the equation. But it's still something that happens, and you see it. And
it's still there, and we have to continue to work on that. You're right.
Yeah. But it's rarer. There's that word again. Aggressively. What did you say earlier? Aggressively reduce or whatever. Aggressively limit. Yes, we have to aggressively limit that. This is so anybody knows. I reached out to Jai. He didn't reach out to me. I reached out to him. I asked for this. He didn't, come on here trying to push his way in to promote himself. So this is for anybody who might be watching this to think they're going to find something to pick on him about, or pick on me for only having him on. Hey, if you disagree with him and you're running for office and you want to come on here and talk about what's going to make you a better candidate, I hope this doesn't bother you. I will let them come on.
Absolutely.
And if somebody wants to have a debate, I will host a debate platform through this as well. I would gladly do that. I'm disinterested in the sense that I don't live in Hennepin County. So the only dog I have in this fight is the people I care about who are suffering right now under a lack of leadership up there. So if somebody thinks they can come on and present, I'm fine with that. I'm working with I think is it Mark? He has a really difficult last name to say, not nearly as easy as yours. Is it? I'm trying to talk to him. He's another one that's running up there, and I cannot remember how to say his last name right now.
Oh, for sheriff?
Yeah.
Kluko, I think.
Yeah, Kluko. I think Kluko. was in communication with him, and that kind of fell apart. But my platform's open. Anybody that thinks they can come up here and present a case for why they're better. But I tell you what, I really like how you answered the questions today. And just so everybody knows, he didn't have a list. I didn't send him a list of things we were going to talk about. This was all free form. And so what could people do if they want to learn more about you and want to point people towards your campaign if they live in greater Minnesota but have friends in that jurisdiction?
Well, I see that you have the website listed. I appreciate that. My social media is at Jai for Sheriff, so on my Twitter and my Facebook and Instagram. And I just want to reiterate this. I understand there's a lot of people that may not live in the metro area, but we need to figure out this crime because it is a state issue.
Absolutely.
And you see that. So please take interest in this as far as following, being engaged, and if there's anything else you'd be inclined to do to help, please do so. And I'm available to answer any questions. So
yeah, he made time for me, and I'm way down here in the southeast corner of the state. I'm so far down south, I'm almost in Iowa. And I don't want your crime down here.
No,
not
I
at
don't
all.
crime up here. So
Well, I don't think anybody does. I don't even think the criminals want it anymore.
right.
They just keep doing it out of habit. Hey, I know you got things to do, and you're probably going to have to eat lunch before you go to your next event.
Yeah, we'll see here. We'll see if we have time. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you making the time for me, and I'll push this out. And if you enjoyed it, you can share it with whoever you want. And if there's something else you feel the need to talk about as the race begins to heat up, let me know. Reach out to me, and we'll get you back on. We'll talk about it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Have a good day.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's 100% right. Crime in the Twin Cities is not going to just stay in the Twin Cities. It's going to bleed out into greater Minnesota. And don't think that just because you're far away from it, it's not going to affect you. And even here in the United States, crime in major metro areas affects everybody because it gets federal law enforcement involved. It gets state level law enforcement involved. It's taxpayer dollars that are going to do work to stop it. So we have to be interested in these kind of races, and we have to take note because what happens in the major metro areas bleeds into and affects the daily life of people in broader society and broader regions. Once again, 22-0 challenge going on. Anything you order between now and the end of April, once you pay it ships, a portion of those proceeds will get set aside to go to the 22-0 campaign. Juan from Right America Media is going to match up to $100, and Kim and his wife from Second Generation Creations are going to match as well, up to $100. So you have a few days left. You got roughly 7 days to order if you haven't ordered yet. So reach out to me, tcpearson@protonmail.com. Here, I'll scroll this through so you guys can see it. So Twitter @RobeRegiment, Facebook tcpearson@protonmail.com. Let me know what you're interested in. Mugs, cups, tumblers, low balls, these really nice stainless steel shot glasses with black with a laser etched Minnesota Black Robe Regiment on it. I've got keychains, and I got these really nice. These are I love these. That's slate. See that? Slate. It's phenomenal stuff. So reach out to me and let me know so we can do something for the vets. And I am thinking about tackling my next project. I'm thinking about tackling something for law enforcement mental health. As frustrated as I have been with what's happened to me over the last 2 years at the hands of law enforcement, I still love and care for and respect the people in the rank and file. And I want them to know that we want them to be well, and we want them to honor their oath. And we'll see what we can do with that. So tune in later today. I got Laura Rear coming on this afternoon to talk about some changes and some updates in her move to be an independent telemedical provider. She is a licensed, excuse me, she's not a licensed practical nurse. Laura is a nurse practitioner. She has a doctorate as a nurse practitioner, and she's expanding. And we're going to bring her on to talk about that, talk about why she's decided to do it and expand into the areas she's expanding to, and what that means for you if you're in the upper Midwest. So it's going to be an exciting conversation. Won't be very long, but it's going to be chock full of information and an announcement. So make sure that you tune in. And as always, like, comment, and share. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I'm going to ask you to make sure that you do. It helps me in the algorithm. And when you like, it pushes me up in the algorithm. And when you share, it pushes me up in the algorithm. And even when you comment, even if you disagree with something I'm saying, it helps. I love feedback, and I love pushback. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, later today, Sic Semper Tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at